Gate vs JSDF fought there is terrible. And it's terrible for so many reasons and so many layers. It has atrocious world building, shallow narrative, characters that if I were to describe them as one-dimensional, it would be insulting to one-dimensional characters. It's absolute power fantasy wank, and it's a goddamn pro-military nationalist propaganda piece on top of all that. It's honestly kinda impressive of how unintelligent this series is. Those who know this channel and my work are most likely aware that I love world building. I like creating deeper narrative and consider scenarios on many layers, so to not miss anything. And even then, I make mistakes. But I can honestly say that at least I put in some effort into thinking through a given story or narrative. Which I doubt can be said about the author of Gate. Now, this video will be more than just critique of a series. A lot of people voiced their disappointment and critique in the past, and I do not feel the need to simply add onto that pile. The anime was published a decade ago after all. Damn, I'm old. Pushing existential crisis aside, in this video I will attempt to explore the concept of the story itself, that is, how modern military might operate while transported to a fantasy setting, with the titular Gate acting as the pathway between two realities. But before we begin, remember to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, the whole shtick. You know what to do. If you can, support me through Patreon, or if you want to donate to Star Wars X Warhammer 40k series art budget, do so through Ko-fi. I would appreciate it very much. With that out of the way, let's begin. In the original series, the titular Gate opens into a low fantasy world, which is essentially on an easy mode for the arriving Japanese forces. We have several intelligent species, dragons, and a form of magic that's rare and difficult to master. And of course we have the Discount Romance, the Sadiran Empire. Technologically, they are somewhere between the late Roman Empire and the early medieval period. The setting includes gods and blessed individuals, but we rarely see the gods directly manifest their powers outside of their chosen agents, and even then, they don't seem to care much about the visitors from another reality. Gate features a soft magic system, where magic can achieve many things, but it's primarily limited by the mage's understanding of natural world. The deeper their understanding of the world and its guiding principles, the better they become at manipulating or bending them for their own purposes. One of the characters, Lele, grows significantly in power thanks to her knowledge of the physical laws from our world. That's all fine and good, but again, magic is limited to a tiny number of individuals and has a rather minor impact on the overall story. In fact, it's one of the few resources in the fantasy world that the Japanese neither explore nor exploit in any meaningful way throughout the series. So, in short, this low fantasy setting offers few, if any, real challenges to the Japanese self-defense forces. There are no mages or magical artifacts widespread enough to negate the power of modern firearms or explosives. Even fewer tools exist that could threaten military vehicles. The limited number of individuals who could pose a threat, the mages, are extremely rare and, interestingly enough, not utilized by the Empire. This is despite the fact that the Empire supposedly hosts the greatest known magic academy. I could go on a tangent here about how shallow the world building is, but that would be a waste of time. If I tried to dissect every absurdity in the series, we'd be here for hours. I could also focus solely on the premise of the gate opening into a low fantasy world like in the original story. However, I think it's more interesting to explore the challenges and difficulties a modern military would face in different types of fantasy settings, which better highlights the wasted potential of this concept. I will discuss 4 potential scenarios for the type of world the gate could open into. Low fantasy, like the original Gate or the TV version of the Game of Thrones. Middle fantasy, like The Witcher or Earthsea. High fantasy, like The Lord of the Rings or Dungeons and Dragons. Dark fantasy, like Warhammer Fantasy, Dark Souls, or Elden Ring. By exploring the challenges a modern military would face in each of these settings, we can not only highlight the shallow worldbuilding of Gate's low fantasy world, as I've already begun to do, but also appreciate the missed storytelling potential of a Gate leading to a truly fantastical and mystical world. Let's start with low fantasy, a setting that's basically a medieval world with some magical elements and mythical monsters. These creatures are usually more like unusually intelligent animals than truly sapient beings. Magic, if it exists at all, is rare and generally limited in power. You might think a modern military would have an easy time operating in such world, and that's exactly what the original Gate suggests. But I prefer to point out a few challenges that would be much harder to overcome. The most important one? Infrastructure. The Gate series rarely acknowledges this. It conveniently places Roman-quality roads everywhere, but I won't. You have to understand that a low fantasy world, like most fantasy settings in general, wouldn't have anything remotely close to the infrastructure of the Roman Empire. A modern military would honestly prefer to drive through a modern, developing country rather than deal with medieval grade trucks and dirt roads. At best, your vehicles would be moving only slightly faster than off-road speeds. And then there is the issue of bridges. People often forget that the bridges are built to support only a certain amount of weight. The ones in low fantasy medieval level setting would likely be designed for horse-drawn carriages, not armored vehicles. A Humvee might make it across safely, but forget about tanks. If you want to deploy heavy vehicles, you'd have to build your own infrastructure. Not just bridges, but even roads. A tank rolling over a medieval road would tear it apart and make it unusable almost immediately. That's not a minor inconvenience. It means your military will be limited to light or, at best, medium vehicles plus aircraft, if those can be supported. But the problems don't stop there. You won't be putting satellites in orbit anytime soon, so you'd need to construct your own radio towers. Preferably in strategic locations to extend your communication range as far as possible. and hope the terrain doesn't block your signal. Speaking of terrain, you are entering completely uncharted territory. Medieval maps would be nowhere near the level of detail modern militaries rely on. So, congratulations! You will now have to dedicate a significant amount of resources to mapping the area, ensuring you know what's nearby and what's far away, especially if you plan to operate beyond the immediate region surrounding the gate. And then there is another issue, one the Gate series completely ignores: disease. And I don't just mean the risk of your soldiers contracting some unknown illness or bacteria that can turn into a pandemic back home. That's half the problem. The other half is something we've already seen in history: the discovery of American continent and the near extinction of native population that followed. If history repeats itself, you are looking at wiping out something like 90% of the local population through unintended biological contamination. And no matter how tightly you control the media, that's not going to go over well with the public or the international community. Not to mention, anyone who survives in the fantasy world will likely view you as bringers of the apocalypse, avatars of death. Good luck repairing that image with a Hearts and Mind campaign. All the problems I've just described would be challenge a modern military would have to face in this scenario. And remember, we are still talking about a low fantasy setting. The gods don't intervene directly. Monsters are basically just intelligent animals. The few truly dangerous ones are rare. Magic, due to its scarcity, isn't a real threat. And yet, despite all that, operating in a low fantasy world would still be a logistical nightmare. Honestly, the best you could hope for would be to secure the territory surrounding the gate, maybe establish a few outposts. But beyond that, there is no guarantee that expanding further would yield any real benefits for your country. Even if this fantastical world had any valuable resources, there is no certainty you could reliably transport them back home, or that the cost of establishing such an operation wouldn't outweigh the gains. Now let's move to a middle fantasy setting, something more akin to what we see in The Witcher. Here all the problems we discussed in the low fantasy scenario still apply, but now the world itself is far more fantastical. The technological level remains low, and that's not a major issue. Even if the locals have access to primitive black powder weapons, they pose no serious threat to a modern military. However, magic becomes a much greater concern. Magic users, while still relatively rare, are more capable of outright breaking the laws of physics rather than simply bending them. The same goes for magical artifacts, which, though uncommon, can potentially bend reality itself. Good luck countering teleportation or mind reading with modern technology. Depending on how clever the local mages are, a modern military force could quickly find itself outmaneuvered by abilities that modern science simply can't defend against. And while this is a serious problem, it's not the biggest one. Mages are more dangerous here, but they are still relatively rare, and modern technology should still hold an overall advantage. No, mages aren't your worst worry. The magic creatures are. In Middle Fantasy, fae, ghosts and demons, even if they are local, are real. Depending on the type, they can only be hurt or driven off with specific sigils of faith or special materials like silver. Sure, a dose of hard-hitting reality, a grenade or a bomb, might help, but there is no guarantee. Have fun getting PTSD watching your friends get eaten by shadow demons that ignore machine gun fire. The same goes for curses, hexes, and dark omens. Entering a forbidden place might cause a curse to spread through your soldiers, one that can only be cured by faith or a magical ritual. Congratulations! Your dipshit commander ignored the locals' superstitious warnings and marched the unit through the Rot Valley. Now you and your entire unit are rotting alive, slowly turning into zombies. If you are lucky, a cleric will cleanse the curse. Oh wait, that's a problem now, isn't it? Modern militaries don't have access to magic, so you have to work with locals. They know the rules that ghosts, fae, demons and monsters follow. Listen to them if you want to avoid trouble. In mid-fantasy, gods usually remain somewhat elusive, similar to low fantasy, but I wouldn't risk pissing them off. Drone striking a temple of a goddess of nature might bring 9 months of constant rain and 3 months of bone-freezing cold. I don't care how technologically advanced your military is, you won't endure something like that. One real upside in this scenario is that exploiting magic, alchemy, and magical resources can be hugely beneficial. In mid-fantasy, magic starts to break the rules of reality, and that can be used offensively. But in most cases, a modern military would still have the upper hand. The true game changer would be healing magic and other utility spells. If you discover a spell or potion that cures cancer, Alzheimer or similar diseases, the entire operation's priorities shift. Protect those who can perform such miracles and get them working for your government. Same goes for fantasy ores, like Mithril or something similar. That's the kind of resource you'd want to secure, even through trade. You don't get to play around with magical metals every day. So, in low fantasy, the main problem is the terrible infrastructure and the need to build it up before you can operate efficiently. Not to mention the potential threat of plague on either side of the gate. In mid-fantasy, on top of that, you have to watch out for local monsters and curses. Remember to build your road around the cursed swamp, because trying to drive through it will guarantee all your tools and vehicles end up haunted. I'm sorry, sir. The demon is in the tank and refuses to leave. Now let's move on to high fantasy and you are so incredibly screwed. Because gods are very much a thing here, and they are active. Unlike our world, where we spend millennia killing each other over which god is real, in a high fantasy world, they spend millennia killing each other over which god is the best. Because they actually show up. They perform miracles, they send angels and demons. In some settings, they quite literally define the rules of reality. You'd better hope the local deities at least tolerate your presence. And for the love of everything holy, do not do anything to anger them. Piss off the god who rules over fire? Congratulations! Fire doesn't work for you anymore. Or worse, it's actively sabotaging you. Engines, guns, even gas stoves either stop working or explode. Anger, the god of cooking? Congratulations, spoiled food and salmonella for everyone. And that's still mid compared to what others can do. Imagine what a god of weather could unleash, or hell, a god of war. Let's say you anger that one, and suddenly your forces suffer constant misfortune in battle. Now your modern military is getting outsmarted and outmaneuvered by medieval knights with bows and spears. Try explaining that to the folks back home. If a mysterious stranger appears in your camp without setting off any alarms and politely informs you that the gods of this world are unhappy with your presence, leave immediately, drop everything and start running. I don't care how technologically advanced you think you are not equipped to challenge beings who literally control or define the rules of their own reality. But even if the local gods tolerate your presence, that doesn't mean there aren't other godlike beings who won't. Remember, high fantasy means the kind of magic and abilities you see in D&D can exist here, which includes level 20 adventurers. And there is no dungeon master to stop the wizard from using wish to turn your bones into copper or to curse every weapon and machine you have so they rust instantly. Not to mention fighters who move faster than the human eye can follow, or barbarian who can bench press tanks. What I'm saying is, a clever and industrious level 20 adventuring party is far more dangerous than any modern military force. But even if the gods and natives, including those adventurers, are somehow fine with your presence, there will still be monsters that aren't, because some creatures are hostile to everyone. In low and mid-fantasy settings, monsters usually act like smart animals or beings driven by instinct. There are exceptions, of course. Ancient dragons or true vampire can be incredibly powerful even there, but they are rare. In high fantasy, the same beings are nothing short of demigods, if not gods themselves. Your fighter jets won't help when a great dragon can summon a hurricane with a single word of power. And no amount of bullets will harm an ancient vampire who can turn into mist or slip between shadows at will. Those beings aren't animals or mindless beasts. They are often smarter than humans. Some will see you as nothing more than an ape with a slightly fancier rock than the locals, and they will snuff you out of existence without a second thought. More importantly, other realities are often connected to the main plane of existence. Good luck finding your way out of a fake kingdom or the pits of hell, because there is very real chance those places actually exist here. And I'm not even touching on how much more powerful and dangerous curses, hexes, and forbidden lands are in high fantasy world compared to mid fantasy one. Then again, greater danger brings greater reward. A high fantasy setting could offer resources and wonders beyond comprehension. The very laws of physics as we know them can be casually broken or ignored, and I expect the desire to secure those wonders would quickly outweigh any concerns about the potential consequences, especially if those powerful beings ever found a way to cross into our world. Because if we go by gate rules, people and creatures with magics retain those abilities in our reality. Ability to use magic might, for now, be exclusive to the people from the fantasy realm, but magic itself isn't limited to it. So we are taking the risk that either benevolent or malevolent beings could gain a foothold in our world, and we don't have any native-born heroes to save us from their influence. Even worse, in our world, we have corporations. And if you think Amazon wouldn't make a deal with a literal devil so the souls of the damned could work in their warehouses, you haven't been paying attention. That's also something Gate completely fails to explore, because it limits itself to a low fantasy setting. What happens if malicious powers gain a foothold in our reality, corrupting people with wealth or influence, while our advanced technology is incapable of even detecting it? We can handle the problems of low or mid-fantasy worlds to a greater or lesser degree. But high fantasy problems need high fantasy solutions. Honestly, if it was my decision and I had the authority to do so, the moment I discovered a magical gate leading to a high fantasy realm, I'd blow it up or seal it in concrete, Chernobyl sarcophagus style. Then I'd designate a restricted zone around it, just to make sure that if anything breaches containment, we at least know and can start figuring out how to counter it. And that kind of defenses would be absolutely necessary if the gate led to a dark fantasy world. Because in this scenario, we are not cooked, we are not roasted, we are thrown into the pit and turned into charcoal. Think of every problem and danger I've mentioned so far. And now imagine that most beings in this world are actively malicious or straight up corrupted. At this point, you'd need to form something like the SCP Foundation or a global anti-fantasy coalition, and fortify the gate on both sides. Do everything in your power to make sure the horrors on the other side never reach our reality. Sure, there might be friendly people there. Maybe you'd even want to help them. But dark fantasy setting usually means horrors beyond human comprehension, being capable of corrupting the minds and souls of mortals. If you end up in a world with dark entities like those from Berserk, pack your things and leave. The dark gods can twist your friends, animals, even your machines into hateful, sentient abominations, spreading their malice as far as possible. Cute, short-stacked goblin girls are not worth getting your soul devoured. Get your priorities in order, damn it! Dark gods and demons are waiting on the other side. Let's not test our luck. But then again, knowing the greed of corporations and politicians, they'd gladly endanger our entire reality for a bit more profit. So, hey, our world is probably screwed anyway. Before long, we'd find ourselves fighting for survival as demon-corrupted armies and dark lords claim our world for their own. All because someone couldn't help themselves and decided to poke their head through some stupid gate. And that's basically all I wanted to present in this video. The wasted potential of Gate. Because if this concept was approached honestly, with a more challenging fantasy world on the other side of a titular gateway, we could have had a far more interesting story, instead of just another power fantasy wank. It would have been fascinating to see a modern military forced to rely on the natives of that world to survive, to fend off local monsters and navigate dangers they don't understand. Venturing beyond the relative safety of a gate and the fortress guarding it could have been a harrowing experience, showing how modern technology sometimes just isn't enough in truly fantastical realm. You could have scouts and rangers from our world slowly turning into trans-dimensional adventurers, adopting local customs, learning magic, even converting to new faiths and spreading them back home. And if you wanted to take a darker route, you could lean into a proper Stalker-style atmosphere, with criminals and volunteers venturing beyond the military cordon that protects our world from the dark fantasy realm, searching for alchemical potions, artifacts, and resources worth a fortune. Now that I think about it, a story where Stalker meets Gate would be awesome. An idea for the future, perhaps. Anyway, that's about it for this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and ring-ding that bell. If you can, support me through Patreon or Ko-fi. I would appreciate it very much. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed. Now, my dear viewers and listeners, remember, wherever you are, whatever you do, try to enjoy yourself while you can. I wish you most critical day. Ta-ta!